I don't know who needs to hear this today, but we can rest in the promises of God. Last week, we talked about how many of the songs that we sing are understood or interpreted in a way that is very different than the authors originally conceived of them, or the context that resulted in them being written. The example that we looked at was the song, "I Need Thee Every Hour," and how that song is, for many of us, a prayer in times of desperation or times of despair. And yet this song was actually written in a moment of profound joy. This week, I want us to consider a song that was written in an actual time of despair. And unfortunately, this song has been relegated to the invitation song. You know, that song towards the end of the service where it's everyone's cue that the service is about over. And so gather your purse, gather your Bible, whatever else the case might be, it's almost time to go eat lunch. And when we understand the context behind that song, it's really a travesty that it has been relegated in many instances to just the invitation song. The song was written by Charlotte Elliott, and she was a resident of Brighton, England. The circumstances have been lost to history, but Charlotte was either born or soon after birth suffered either an illness or an injury that left her a complete invalid. And for many years, she struggled with a sense of uselessness, an inability to be productive, whether that be in the family or in the church or in society. Her nephew was a reverend in the Anglican Church. His name was Handley C.G. Moulay, and he commented in 1894 about the circumstances that led to this song being written back in 1834. He says, "But ill health still beset her. It often caused her the peculiar pain of seeming uselessness in her life, while the circle around her was full of unresting service ableness to God. Such a time of trial marked the year 1834, when she was 45 years old and living at Westfield Lodge in Brighton." Her brother was also an Anglican reverend. His name was H.V. Elliott, and he had conceived of a school that would be called St. Mary's Hall in Brighton. The goal of this school was to provide a high level of education, a high quality education to clergy daughters at a nominal cost. In order to help fund the building of this school, a bazaar was being planned or prepared, being organized in order to raise some of the funds that would be necessary. And this bazaar was going to be held at Westfield Lodge, again, where Charlotte was living. And so for the days and weeks leading up to the bazaar, there was all kinds of activity going on, and especially the day before the bazaar. Many people were there from morning until night, working tirelessly. Everyone, that is, except Charlotte. All Charlotte could do was lay on the sofa and watch the activity, and again be reminded of her perceived uselessness. It's not a far stretch to go from physical despair to spiritual despair. And apparently that is exactly what happened to Charlotte. The night before the bazaar, she slept very little. She was troubled, she was tormented by her sense of uselessness, driving her deeper and deeper into despair. The day of the bazaar came, and again, all Charlotte could do was lay on the sofa and watch the activity, and again be reminded of her seeming uselessness. as she continued to reflect not just on her sense of physical uselessness, but also her spiritual uselessness. She picked up a pen and began to write. What is the song that she wrote that grew out of her deep sense of despair? Take a listen, and I'll be back.
Just as I am without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee, O Lamb of God, I come, just as I am, and waiting not to rid my soul of one dark blot, to thee whose blood can cleanse each spot, O Lamb of God, I come, just as I am, thou wilt receive, wilt welcome, pardon, cleanse, relieve, because thy promise I believe, O Lamb of God, I come,
Charlotte would call this song the formula of her faith. And she put these words down as she reflected on the reality of who she was and what she was, as well as the reality of who God is and what He is. Within a matter of years, this song was published in the Invalid's Hymn Book and then spread like wildfire. And so the next time that you are experiencing a sense of uselessness, a sense of worthlessness, a sense of despair, I would encourage you to reflect on the song Just As I Am, not as an invitation song, but as an acknowledgement in a moment of despair of God's greatness and God's goodness. And pay attention specifically to one of the verses of Just As I Am. An excerpt of that verse says, "Because thy promise I believe." We can rest in the promises of God. Promises such as, "I will not leave you or forsake you." Promises such as, "I will keep in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on me." "I am your shepherd. You shall not want. I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there you may be also." When we are feeling useless, when we are feeling worthless, when we have been pushed to the point of despair, we are certainly reminded, just as I am. But we can also be reminded of just who God is and rest in His promises. I've got nothing but big love for you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.